Hello everyone, and welcome to the first of our Duncan and Toplis webinars, which are considering the impact of environmental, social and governance, or ESG, on our businesses. I am Sally-Anne Hurn, an Associate Director here at Duncan and Toplis. I'm also part of the sustainability team here, and I'm a key part of developing client services in this area. I've been working in the project team since the beginning of the year, and I believe it's a key part of the Duncan and Toplis journey. Mostly, I'm excited to share with you what we've learnt so far, as we have a real understanding that companies are facing increasing expectations from different stakeholders to be proactive in managing their ESG risks and opportunities as part of their wider strategies. I believe that this should not only generate returns in the here and now, but also create and deliver sustainable value for the future. In the first of our webinars, we're considering E for environmental. And without wanting to steal the speaker's thunder, I'll just give you an idea of what they're going to discuss. So first of all, how to properly communicate sustainability targets and emission reduction plans to avoid greenwashing and further reduce carbon footprint. And also how marketing and communications can help to reduce our carbon footprint. So I have great pleasure today in having both Caroline Cleary, our Marketing Director here at Duncan and Toplis, and also Banner from Net Zero Now. They're going to talk to you about some of the environmental considerations that businesses may look to consider. Caroline and Banner will be happy to take any questions that you have at the end of the webinar, so please feel free to post them in the Q&A section. If we don't have enough time to cover them, then we'll make sure we answer them as soon as we can after the webinar. Overall, our aim is that by the end of this, you will have an insight into how businesses are embracing environmental principles to deliver sustainable value for the future. So without any further delay, I would like to introduce Banner from Net Zero Now to discuss some of the key areas that she sees in her role.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for having me on today's call. It's a pleasure to be here from Net Zero Now, and we love doing those talks every now and then, and very happy to collaborate and to be part of those in the future. So I'm just going to share my screen and hopefully all goes well. All right, so what am I covering today? So first of all, just giving you an overview, what is carbon accounting? What does that mean? How does the Paris Agreement have anything to do with carbon accounting? Then of course, the Greenhouse Gas Protocol and SBTi. You might have heard of some of these acronyms. I'm just here to break them down for you, make them as simple and easy and straightforward for you to understand when you do come across them. Then what is the foundation of an effective climate strategy? So what's an effective climate strategy and why is that important? And why is it important to have credible and relevant content? And then finally, we'll be talking about how do you communicate this climate strategy, whether it's to your customers, your investors, your peers, internally or externally. And of course, how to avoid greenwashing and the whole thing around claims of greenwashing. And finally, I'll end it with understanding your audience. So knowing who you're speaking to, whether that's investors, regulators, employees, and customers. And we'll top it off with questions. Please feel free to ask me questions at the end. Would love to hear them or drop them off in the chat box and I'll get back to them. So I only have 15 minutes, so I'll jump right into it. So of course, there's a really strong emphasis that corporations must take positive climate action. And that's why we're here today. That's why Duncan and Toplis are here today. And that's why we work with you guys to help corporations take positive climate action. And basically to do this and to do this credibly, there is an expectation that organizations need to be transparent about what they're doing. And when they're developing targets, they're not just targets for the sake of targets, but they're science-based climate strategies that they can rely on the climate science and they actually support the overall arching goal, which is the Paris Agreement. So if you look at what carbon accounting is, the purpose of accounting your carbon is to really quantify your greenhouse gas emissions. So looking at your operations, but also looking at your value chain to try to understand where your emissions lie, but also to be able to manage them and then reduce your environmental impact. Then, of course, there's the process. So the Greenhouse Gas Protocol, and this is one of the acronyms that I mentioned, it provides the standards and the guidelines for how we would measure and report our emissions. So we use the Greenhouse Gas Protocol in most of carbon accounting. And when you do that, you follow a set of guidelines that you know that you can rely on, and therefore you can compare yourselves to other organizations that are in the same industry and know that you are using a foundation, a protocol that you can rely on and helps you not kind of hide any emission sources or anything like that. And then finally, you've got your outputs. So when you're measuring carbon, your carbon footprint, you can really divide your emissions into 3 scopes. And that is scope 1, that is your direct emissions from your owned and controlled sources. And then you've got your scope 2, which is your indirect emissions from purchased energy. And then you've got your scope 3, which is your value chain emissions. So that's everything that you buy from your suppliers, or for example, employees commuting, etc. I'll show you what that looks like. So if we look at what kind of data we're collecting when we're accounting for our carbon emissions, scope 1, so this is stuff that is managed by on-site and that we own. Scope 2 is the electricity, all the energy that we buy. And then scope 3 is everything else, whether that's purchased goods, that's working from home, that's your waste, that's business travel and commuting, that's investments as a company that you invest in, anything like that. That's, the tea and coffee that you buy for your offices, etc. So what are the science-based targets? The science-based targets is really a collaboration between CDP, UN, Global Compact, and WRI. And it's specifically targeted at being incorporated by organizations when they're looking to support the Paris Agreement goals, that they would develop targets that are science-based. And so that would help us collectively keep warming under 1.5 degrees or well below 2 degrees. So the targets are really focused on all of the scopes that we mentioned. They're focused on scope 1, 2, and 3, and they're focused at least reducing them by 40% by 2030. And for you to, as an organization, once you develop an SBTI or a science-based target, there's a rigorous process that makes sure that when you as an organization have submitted those targets, that you're really trying to do the best that you can and you're being as transparent as possible. So that's why the science-based targets are really well respected in the sphere of climate change. So the benefits of developing science-based targets, they help an organization drive strategic climate action. So it's really about climate change. It's really about Paris Agreement. It's future-proofing growth. So it actually challenges an organization to think, how can we think outside of the box? How can we reduce our emissions by 40%, which is not an easy task. But it also demonstrates leadership in the climate sphere. So if you're doing it among different organizations in your industry, it really shows that you know what you're talking about and you're willing to really make a change. And then, of course, it avoids claims of greenwashing because, like I said, it's based on measuring correctly using the Greenhouse Gas Protocol, but also it's science-based and there's a rigorous process for your targets to be approved by the initiative. So what does it mean to develop an impactful climate strategy? That really what it means is being aligned with the science-based targets and being aligned with carbon accounting. And what I mean by that is really looking at your footprint, understanding what your footprint is, and then developing a strategy based on where your emission sources lie. It's not necessarily what your customers want. It's not necessarily what's fancy. It's not necessarily what's pretty. It could be really mundane things like you're commuting, or it could be things like you're buying way too much coffee and tea, although I doubt that that's the case, but it's really focusing on the science and the numbers. And that's kind of the foundation of building an impactful climate strategy. You would, of course, have to set a vision and clear goals. You would have to assess climate risks and opportunities, understanding clear owners within the business and actions and resources, but also understanding how climate is related across all these relative business units. And then, of course, you would need to regularly monitor your progress against the targets that you've set and ensuring that you're transparent along the entire strategy, the progress, and all the different functions that are building or have, they have leeway into building that strategy. And then, of course, third-party audits can lend credibility. That's very important when you have a climate strategy, is being able to have an external person like Net Zero Now or any other consultancy that could really help you think about where it is that you're doing enough or where you're not doing enough. And then, of course, always reviewing your strategy to see Have we improved over the last year? We've set out to do X, Y, and Z. Has that truly reduced our carbon emissions? Have we increased our emissions in any other way? And what can you do about that? And then, of course, engaging stakeholders throughout the entire process. So whether that's your peers internally, your colleagues, the board, if you've been working with suppliers to reduce their emissions across your value chain, have you been engaging with them and have you been informing them of the progress you have made? Now, how can we avoid greenwashing in communications? It happens way too often, and we've seen it with the World Cup. We've seen it. Samsung has been recently, Persil is one of the ones that has been attacked. It happens all too many times, and it's because it's focused on marketing, and sometimes it's marketing certain products or it's marketing certain programs, but it's not necessarily backed up by climate science, and it's not backed up by the information or your footprint, and that's really where the sources of greenwashing can occur. So my advice really is to avoid greenwashing is always stick to the science, always stick to the progress, numbers that you can factually rely on and that have been audited. So how to avoid claims of greenwashing? The risks is that you would lose trust, a reputational damage, scrutiny, and legal action. And so really the principles of credible communication are accuracy, transparency, and third-party validation, whether that's on your greenhouse footprint or certain certifications and audits that we discussed. And then, of course, aligning communications with actual performance and strategy. And this is what I meant by they're focusing on marketing certain products or programs. And really what you do want to market on is your actual performance, your strategy, and concrete data on emissions and the progress that's made. And then, of course, it's when you're marketing certain things that you've done in the climate sphere, it's looking to use CDP or the GRI standards. The GRI standards is what you can quote in your sustainability reports, the SBTI, whether that's developing science-based targets, and then the SASBs, which is also another reporting framework like the GRI standards that you could use in your sustainability reports. And ultimately, my message here is really focus on the integrity and honesty when communicating with stakeholders. Sustainability isn't something that we achieve overnight. It's not something we achieve in a quarter. It's not something we achieve in a year. It's a constant battle, and it's a journey, and that's what makes it so difficult, but beautiful. Finally, understanding your audience. So who is your audience? Are those investors? Are they employees? Are they clients? Are they regulators? So understanding what you would do, right? If it's investors or sometimes it's clients or it's external, you would probably want to use sustainability reports, and that's having them either using GRI or SASB. And you would have all the information in those sustainability reports, detailed, audited, with clear defined targets and clear defined progress. Then if it's with your employees, you can, of course, do what we're doing today, which is a webinar, a forum, discussions, but also backed up by numbers and figuring out what you're doing is on numbers. And then, of course, regulators, the reports and so on. So to conclude, it's a very important tool and we use it all the time. It's important that we are very transparent, and external validation is very important so that we can take positive action. And then, of course, being optimistic about this whole process. It's a long one, but it needs collaboration and perseverance, and it takes time, but that's okay. So that's really what I want to leave you with today.
Thank you, Bana. That was brilliant. Thanks very much for your insight. Certainly lots of acronyms that we all need to get our head around there. I'm sure the audience have taken lots away from that. So next over to Caroline. So as I've said, Caroline Cleary is our marketing manager at Duncan Toplis. She has a really important role in driving forward Duncan Toplis's own environmental considerations and is responsible for our overall client and marketing strategy.
Thank you, Sally, and thank you, Bana, very much for sharing that with us. I'm hoping to add to the conversation today a little bit about where marketing and where communications fits into your overall environmental strategy, and actually how using the talents within your team in terms of communication is a very strong way of ensuring that your clients and your people and your communities understand who you are as an organisation and how and where ESG matters to you. So over the next few slides, I'm going to go a little bit into why our business is looking at environment. Why are we looking at ESG on the whole? What does that mean? What does that look like for organisations? And then also how, what are some of the practical steps that we can be taking to ensure that we're working as we want to in this new world. So E is for environmental, and that's about the reduction of our carbon footprint, and it's the reduction of wasteful practices that in business we can be guilty of. According to some Forbes research, whilst 90% of business executives believe in the importance of sustainability, only just over half of them, 60% of them, have implemented sustainability strategies in their businesses. And today, more and more consumers, more and more buyers are adopting eco-friendly behaviours when it comes to making buying decisions, and they're expecting businesses to buy in the same way that they do. So taking your environmental accreditations to market has become a discipline in its own right, and it really does test your marketing skills in that way, to be able to use your business for social good. And a key facet to all marketing, green marketing or the marketing we do every day, and certainly in this instance, is that green marketing isn't just the responsibility of people with marketing in their job title. It's really anybody who's responsible for how a business goes to market. That goes from the leadership team all the way through to the shop floor. Now, green marketing is key in terms of how we can fulfil the E in ESG, in the way that we can fulfil the environmental expectations of a business. So green marketing helps to raise awareness of environmental issues, and it encourages buyers to make more sustainable choices. So promoting eco-friendly products and practices, we're able as businesses to differentiate ourselves from our competitors and appeal to buyers who are looking to source more environmentally responsible products, and are preferring to work with service providers who are akin to their own personal environmental thoughts and needs. So green marketing supports businesses in reducing their environmental impact by promoting those products and practices with lower carbon footprints, and encourages things like recycling. We know that businesses that are seen as environmentally responsible can really benefit from increased customer loyalty and also builds your brand reputation. Buyers are now looking for green alternatives, and that's something that we can't step back from. That is the buying market that we're all working in. So by promoting those sustainable practices through your marketing campaigns, your business is able to drive positive change and contribute to a more sustainable future, both as how we do business together, but also for our team and for our local communities. So when we're looking at environmental focuses, it's about having our businesses operating smoothly without causing unnecessary harm to the environments that we work in. If your business chooses to neglect those sustainable practices now, the ball is rolling, and crucially, you'll be unable to find the methods you need to be more sustainable and communicate that focus as you go forward. It goes without saying that alongside this environmental sustainability, alongside the community element of doing business in the right way, we have to offset that against the financial focus. But you might be surprised to learn that there's a number of financial incentives to being more environmentally aligned, not least because that's where our buying market is right now. So with 82%, as the slide says, 82% of buyers are wanting brands to embrace sustainability, and going green is a good way for you to be able to stand out from the crowd and gain more customers who are increasingly interested in carbon footprint accounting, and understanding where their products have come from and what impact that can have. So more and more businesses who are in supply chains, such as farming businesses that supply products to major supermarkets, they've got increasing pressure on them to demonstrate their sustainable credentials. And this is a world that exists right now and will only expand out to other sectors, to other business environments. And we will all, as business owners and operators, need to take this into account as we go forward. And if your product or service isn't necessarily linked to the environment, then it's of even greater importance to be able to communicate your own sustainable credentials effectively. Reducing the environmental impact of your business can also help you to attract new team members, employees. And in fact, a recent survey that KPMG did found that 1/3 of young people, and by young people, I think we're looking at that 18 to 25-year-old block, they have turned down a job offer because there is a preferred employer with greater environmental accreditations and a greater sense of responsibility to the society that it's working in. And it's no secret to anybody that happy workers with a strong sense of well-being and purpose are much more productive, and that's good for business. So another stat that's worth looking at is 73% of team members want to have a voice, and 92% of employees are expecting their business leaders to be able to talk about sustainable practices, to talk about ESG, and to be able to verbalise the impact that their business is having on their local environment. So that's where we come to the greenwashing element that Barna touched on earlier. We have to be mindful that when we're going to market and talking about how good we are at businesses at thinking about sustainable practices, that we aren't greenwashing and that we do have the right information that can make a real impact to the people who are receiving our communications. So it's very easy to call out a business that are greenwashing, and increasingly it's what your buyers will be expecting. So we touched a little bit on the financial benefits and focusing on sustainability, but it's also helping us to stay on top of increasing regulatory requirements. You can imagine at Duncan Toplis, we do a huge amount of work in this space, and customers and regulators are demanding increasingly clear transparency over what people are saying they're doing versus what they're actually doing. And it's important to understand that lip service alone isn't going to draw in this new generation of buyers. There's a new kind of ethical consumerism that we can't as businesses fall behind. So Barna touched on a couple of regulations that are in place and the importance of having those certified accreditations. And in some sectors, it can be really obvious where you can go to get those accreditations. So in food, we have fair trade, we have organic, or we have the Forest Stewardship Council, and that can validate eco-friendly claims and compliance with regulations in that sector. But more and more, those mechanisms of trust are going to be required across sectors, and we need to ensure that we're ready for that to be able to overcome the challenges that communicating environmental initiatives can hold. So over the past few years, businesses have been getting to grips with environmental impact and sustainability, and it's moving more and more from something that's nice to have, something that makes us feel good, to something that we must have if we're going to ensure that our businesses are future fit. So the UK government, and there are changes in how our net zero policy is going in government at the moment, but the UK government pledged to decarbonise all sectors of the UK economy in order to reach those net zero targets for our nation. So whilst we have seen an active choice to stall the programme in some ways, there is a greater public demand for all these environmental elements, and businesses are going to be expected, if not from a regulatory and from a governmental perspective, your buyers are going to drive you to show your accreditations in this way, and that impact of waste reduction is going to have more and more of a sway over how people buy from you going forward. So aside from the satisfaction of knowing that we're reducing our carbon footprint, what are those key benefits for businesses going greener? As more environmental regulations are introduced, keeping on top of them is going to be more and more of a challenge. So if you need help with sustainability and the regulatory requirements around the environment, I'd urge you to get in touch with either Sally-Anne or an advisor of your choice so that they can support you through that journey. The Environment Act of 2021 means that businesses now have a much greater responsibility around eliminating things like deforestation. And in November 2023, there's a new act coming into play, the Biodiversity Net Gain Act, and that requires all new building developments to achieve a biodiversity net gain of at least 10%. Most businesses know that we need to get greener to combat climate change and minimise waste and the damage that we're causing to the environment. But what we've found is that almost 60% of the sustainable claims that are being made by major UK businesses, major UK brands were found to be either unsubstantiated because they don't have the certification and accreditation that Barna talked about, or they're misleading, which means that in fact we're claiming things that aren't really true. So I think some of the figures that the government have shared is that 40% of all business claims to be green could be classed as deceptive. So it's no wonder that 7 out of 10 British consumers are really quite suspicious of how green a business can be when it's claiming to be green. And that adds a real layer of complexity to E for environmental in business, and how you can share with your customers, with your team and with your supply chain how green you actually are. And that's where greenwashing comes in. So whilst there's undeniably a marketing value in being green, the growing distrust of buyers for brands that can bend the truth or conflate green matters means there's always an air of suspicion. And buyers aren't the only ones who are wising up to this damaging practice. In fact, there are new fines on the horizon which would force businesses to eliminate misleading messages and challenge them where misleading messaging is found. So there's a bill, it's called the Digital Markets Competition and Consumer Bill, and particularly for larger businesses, they will face an increasing threat of penalties of up to 10% of their global turnover for misleading claims, which includes greenwashing. So it's very important that we start to think about, yes, being a greener provider, yes, communicating that in the right way, but yes, ensuring that we are telling the truth, we are being authentic, and we are able to back up our own claims. So investing in green technologies and in considering the environment, it can actually save you money and lower your business costs too. So there's relatively low swaps within your business, like using LED light bulbs and improving insulation, and more substantial investments like installing solar panels. And they can just drastically reduce the amount that you're spending on energy. That's a cost reduction. But it's also about being green, and it's also about helping people understand how your business functions in a waste reducing way, which puts your business at less risk from volatile energy bills, but also enables your buyers to see that you are active in a space that's green. And going back to the original, some of the early slides, 80% of people are buying in a way that prioritises sustainability. We need to be the people who are providing those products and services to those buyers. So when it comes to green marketing as a practice is growing for a number of reasons, one of which is the increasing awareness and concern for environmental issues amongst buyers. So your buyers are more likely to seek out products and services that are environmentally friendly, and this trend itself has led to businesses adopting more sustainable practices and looking at green marketing as a way to engage an environmentally conscious buyer base. So the growth of green marketing, and bearing in mind that this is all about communication. So we use the term green marketing and we think about marketeers and marketing teams coming up with messages around green. Green marketing is all about communication. And to take the point earlier, it is not about your marketing team. It's about anybody who represents your business in the marketplace. And the growth of green marketing can be attributed as well to the change in technology, the fact that there's so much more easier ways for businesses to take their key messages to market digitally and through technology. So it's been increasingly viable for businesses to be able to engage and promote their environmental efforts to consumers. So this is driven in part by consumer choice. It's driven in part by global reach, and it's driven in part by the ability to do targeted advertising. And that's all come about from the digital age. So with consumer choice, the leveraging of the power of digital platforms is critical to how you drive growth. Whether you use an agency to do your search engine optimization or whether you do it yourself, digital marketing connects you with those target audiences that Barna was talking about, your investors, your clients, your team members, and the world around you, every stakeholder that you have. Digital marketing also connects you with an enormous global network. There's 4.8 billion people worldwide that are accessing digital platforms looking to buy, and that's a huge market space that you're able to access without some of the waste producing activities of the past. Direct mail is a good example of that. So there's a huge opportunity to target and engage those audiences whilst remaining green. And then to touch on the messages that you're putting out through your green marketing, transparency is really key, and understanding what you want to do as a business and what you want to talk about as a business is key. And that comes down to 4 key areas. There's things that are regulatory that we must do, or as new regulations come in, you will need to do as a business. There's things that are good practice. These are the things that you as a business leader feel that you should do. There's then the third piece, which is about the impact on society and about the purpose of your business, the things that you want to do, the positive impacts that you want to make. And then there are things that are nice to have. They're the what could you do as a business in the environmental space. So some examples of those activities could be that you start to use more environmentally friendly materials in your products or in your packaging, make sure it's more recyclable. You could encourage your buyers to repair and reuse products rather than throw them away and buy new ones. You can offer products to the marketplace that are more energy efficient or have low carbon footprints, and you can promote the use of renewable sources. You can also look to partner with organisations that promote sustainability and social responsibility, help you to reduce waste, help you to reduce energy consumption. And you can educate your clients about environmental benefits of a product or service in different ways, encouraging opportunities to buy organic or natural or things that are free from the harmful chemicals that can increase our impact on the environment. And then there's also the consideration about buying locally and how long your products are in transit. And that helps to both reduce costs in terms of profitability, but also supports your local economy and community, which in turn has an impact on your local environment, your local society and your local community. And crucially, how your business is seen as buyers of the future and also employees of the future. The candidate marketplace is increasingly looking at green, looking at environmental and looking at how sustainable your business wants to be when they are making a choice to join you. So let's talk a little bit about how you might approach a start to green marketing. And I've put sort of 6 examples on here. So they're simple and they can be large or they can be small. So if we start with the first, supporting environmental initiatives, that could be something as simple as picking up the litter around your office space. It could be working in partnership with a local environmental organisation and just helping to raise awareness about the importance of protecting the environment, but the position that you are taking as a business when it comes to being environmentally conscious. You can consider changing the way that you send your information out to clients. So rather than using a printed magazine or leaflet or newspaper article, you can look at doing an email service to promote your sustainable products and services, but also to reduce your own carbon footprint whilst effectively reaching a much broader and wider audience and helping people learn more about your brand and what you offer. You can look at changes in your own way to market. So if you have a fleet of vehicles, is there an opportunity to reduce the carbon footprint there, either through e-vehicles or using different types of vehicles, maybe even adopting online meetings where it makes sense. You can create a line of products that's made purely from recycled materials and use different types of channels to promote them and their environmental benefits. And also showcase the fact that your company's eco-friendly practices and products have environmental benefits, but are also really strong products that appeal to consumers that are not only buying, but looking to buy in a much greener way. And one thing that I would look at from a very low cost perspective is to invest in social media marketing. It's an excellent way of getting your message out to marketing. It's digital, it's very flexible. It allows you to advertise and target very specific audiences, and it helps you to build a sense of community. So the questions that you could ask is, well, does green marketing work, and does it work in a way that doesn't clash with the ethics around greenwashing? And the answer must be yes, because we must be doing this in an authentic way. So businesses must continue to be truthful and honest in what they're doing with green initiatives and the way that they use green marketing to communicate it. We talked earlier about how buyers are increasingly wary of green claims, and they don't trust businesses that isn't fully devoted to sustainability. So overall, green marketing can really help your business to advertise your commitment to the world around you, and convince those environmentally sensitive buyers that you are the business that they should work with, and that differentiates yourself from the competitive environment that you're working in. So looking at health and wellness initiatives, looking at local purchasing, looking at ways of reducing your impact in terms of travel, in terms of commuting, looking at ownership diversity, and looking at the ways that your team can volunteer in the local community to support the environment around you. I think all of those types of initiatives mean that green marketing is an increasingly crucial aspect of how you take your business to market and how you encourage your buyers to make more sustainable choices. So the thought that I would leave you with is that by promoting products and practices that are eco-friendly, you're not just reducing your own waste, your own environmental impact, but you're also becoming part of a larger society shift towards sustainability. But the key element for this, for us as business people, is that of course we need to ensure that makes financial sense. And if we are authentic in the way that we take ourselves to market and we talk about our green credentials, it really helps to build and strengthen the relationships we have with buyers at the moment, the relationships we have with our supply chain at the moment, the relationships that we have with our team, but also all of those relationships and how they grow and evolve in the future are underpinned by doing business the right way and choosing how you want to access E for environmental, and what feels right for your business can be quite a personal decision. But when you decide what it is that you want to do, I would urge you to communicate with your audiences what it is that you stand for and what it is that you're doing in this space, because they will react to that. In fact, they are waiting for you to be told. And with that, I'll hand back to Sally-Anne now for some questions, which I'll be happy to take.
Thank you, Caroline. That was a great insight to the impact of marketing on the environment, and also confirming that everybody has a responsibility, just not the business's marketing team, to take environmental forward. So on to the Q&As. There is still time to put any questions in the chat, so please feel free to do that. There's a few already, so if we have a go at those, guys, maybe try and take turns to answer the questions. So the first one is, what feedback do you get from employees when you ask about their carbon footprint? If you don't mind, I wouldn't mind talking about our own journey in this area first, if that's okay with everybody. So I've recently had the pleasure in presenting to our own internal team here at Duncan Toplis, and I took them through the journey so far, including what we're working with Net Zero now in order to obtain certification. The whole of the Duncan Toplis team have input into the data collection, and we've also have a group of individuals who are really passionate in this area. One of them is currently studying a BSc Honours in Environmental Science, and another has a Master's which considered ESG in depth. They really are the best individuals to support our clients on their own ESG journey going forward. Does anyone else have any other thoughts? Caroline, can I pass over to you?
Absolutely. I think it's a really interesting question, because what we found at Duncan Toplis is that this is very much team-led in many ways. So whilst we've acknowledged at a leadership level that ESG is part of how we need to be as an organisation, when it comes to the E for environmental, that really is where we've seen the greatest engagement from our team. We did do an internal survey to help us start to get a handle on the carbon footprint. And I think, Sally-Anne, you'd agree, we were absolutely delighted with the response that we got, not just to the core questions, but also where people were proactively putting ideas forward of how we can get involved. And some of those are big and some of those are small. And one of the real pleasures for us has perhaps been some of the wilding that our team members have taken part in as part of their desire to improve the environment around our office locations, and also the sense of community that's come from that, as team members have really enjoyed taking part in those environmental elements. And I know, Sally-Anne, you've got taking part in a global quiz at the moment of international accounting firms similar to Duncan Toplis, and the team again have really been urging us to get involved in this and enjoying themselves in sharing ideas about how to impact it, and that's been really key. And sort of, if you go a little bit back into, you know, all of our team, all of our people, all of us as individuals, we're all part of this sort of buying wave. We're all part of this drive to ensure that businesses are more sustainable. So whether it is a team member or a client or somebody who you've been working with for a while in a supply capacity, we are all as a group moving more and more into this and getting more and more excited by the positive impacts that can be made. So certainly for Duncan Toplis, I think that the team, from leadership all the way through to the shop floor, we see this as something we must do, but it's actually something we're enjoying doing together as well, I would say.
I'd completely agree with you, Caroline. As you said, the current quiz that we're doing, there's a team of about 15 people, and the beautiful photos of wildlife, butterflies, dragonflies, planting in our office space, and all of that is absolutely amazing to see. People are so engaged with it. Banner, is there anything you'd like to add?
No, I think unless there's any questions for me, no, I'm good.
Okay, so there is another question in the chat, which probably all of us can have a go at. Maybe we'll start with Banner first. So if there's one piece of advice for a business looking to be greener, what advice would you give? So I'll pass over to Banner.
I would really look at your largest emission sources or hotspots. I would start there because that's really the most that you have to play with, and that's the most impactful that you can be. So I would look at your largest emission hotspots and then break that down into and be as granular as you can in the data, and then figure out how you can tackle those big emission hotspots as much as possible. I think that's the best that you could do.
Brilliant. Caroline, is there anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, just really to drill in a bit on the point I made at the end of my slides, which is about authenticity. And as these regulations increasingly come in across our sectors, across our businesses, there are going to be things that we have to do. That's just the law. But then there's the next level. There's the things that you have to do, and there's the things that you want to do, and there's the things that are nice to do. And it's really prioritizing those, but making sure that whatever you choose to do outside of the regulation, you're doing in a really authentic way. It's as much about who you are as an individual, if you're a sole trader, or culturally who you are if you're a bigger organisation, that what you do in an ESG space, and especially when it comes to E for environmental, is what you're doing is true to who you are and true to your values. And that not only means that your team will get involved, but it also means that buyers will build a better rapport with you. So the key to it, yes, is the measurement, and yes, is to keeping abreast of the regulations, but really doing it in a way that's true and believable and reflective of who you want to be as a business working in your local, national, global community.
Thank you, Caroline. I think I'd just like to add, from the experience I've had here at Duncan Toplis, that my piece of advice would be just take the plunge. Starting the journey is probably the most difficult part, and your actions, however little you think they are, will have a real impact on everyone's future. In my opinion, if we all made small steps in this area, then the task wouldn't seem such a massive one going forward. There is one other question in the chat, which is someone who potentially would like to catch up on it again, or look at our slides again. The answer to that is that today's webinar will be available on the Duncan Toplis YouTube channel this afternoon. So keep your eyes open for that. So as it doesn't look like there are any other questions, but obviously if you have any in the future, then please ask. I think it's time to draw the webinar to a close. So I'd like to thank you for your time today. We look forward to seeing you all again when we consider both social and governance in the forthcoming months. Please look out for the links to join these events. If anyone has any questions in the meantime, please feel free to contact me or Caroline at Duncan Toplis, and we will issue feedback forms to the webinar in due course. So if there are any unanswered questions, please feel free to include them on the form. So once again, can I thank both Banner from Net Zero Now and Caroline from Duncan Toplis's marketing team for your time today, and everybody else who took part. Many thanks, everybody.